Friends, Namaskar, good afternoon, and welcome to this special briefing on Prime Minister's visit to France, UAE, and Bahrain, and also his participation at the G7 summit in Biarritz as a Biarritz partner. This entire duration of the visit is from 22nd to 26th August. With me on the podium, I have Secretary Economic Relations, Shri T.S. Tirumurthy, Joint Secretary Multilateral Economic Relations, Shri Suresh Reddy, JS Gulf, Shri Nagendra Prasad, and Joint Secretary Europe West, Shri G. Balasubramaniam. We will have initial remarks by Secretary ER, and after that, I will open the floor to questions. The other Joint Secretaries will chip in as and when necessary. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Friends, thank you very much for coming here this afternoon. Prime Minister will be on bilateral visits to France, UAE, and Bahrain. And he will also attend the G7 summit as Biarritz partner from 22 to 26th of August. Prime Minister will be visiting France at the invitation of President Macron for the 2019 G7 summit in Biarritz as Biarritz partner. Prior to that, he will be in France on a bilateral visit. The Biarritz summit is on 24th to 26th of August, and the bilateral meetings in Paris between 22nd, 23rd of August. The last visit of President Macron to India was in March 2018. In the last 2 years, Prime Minister and President Macron have met 4 times. Prime Minister's visit to Paris in June 2017, President Macron's visit to India in March 2018, and at the G20 summits in December 2018 and June 2019 in Buenos Aires and Osaka, respectively. France is one of the most important strategic partners of India, with ties that are comprehensive, dynamic, and multifaceted. This is also reflected in frequent high-level exchanges and deep political understanding on matters of concern and interest to us. France has also been a strong supporter in international forums. There exists strong cooperation in the fields of defense, maritime security, space, cyber, counterterrorism, and civil nuclear energy. Trade and investment relations have been growing stronger. The bilateral trade in 2018-19 was US dollars 11.89 billion. There are strong scientific, cultural, and people-to-people ties. There are nearly 7,000 Indian students studying in France. We already have an agreement on mutual recognition of degrees, and France is the first country in Europe to have signed a migration and mobility partnership agreement with India. There is a growing exchange of tourists between our two countries, with over 2.5 lakh French tourists visiting India and over 7 lakh Indians visiting France last year. Post-formation of the government in India, high-level political official exchanges have already gathered momentum since 2019. The junior French Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne, visited Delhi and met our Minister of State for External Affairs, Minister of State for Commerce, and called on EAM. PM would reach Paris on 22nd August evening and would be directly proceeding to Chantilly for bilaterals with President Macron. The meeting would have the usual component of a one-on-one meeting, followed by delegation-level talks, exchange of signed MOUs, and a press conference. President Macron would also host Prime Minister for a working dinner on 22nd August. On 23rd August, Prime Minister would meet President Edouard Philippe for a breakfast meeting. On the same day, Prime Minister would address the Indian community at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris and also inaugurate the memorial for the Indian victims of the Air India crash. This memorial is located at Niddi Isle. This memorial is to commemorate the 2 tragic air crashes of Air India flights 245 and 101 in 1950 and 1966, respectively. The discussions are expected to broadly focus on reaffirming France and India as the key strategic and like-minded partners, strengthening of defense partnership, including future defense acquisitions, progress on setting up of Jaitapur nuclear power project, convergent strategic and political priorities in the Indo-Pacific and related operational needs, strengthening bilateral engagement in the key areas of strategic cooperation, defense, space, civil nuclear, counterterrorism, and maritime security, stronger India-France cooperation in the field of conventional and non-conventional security domains, including cybersecurity, encourage French industry and investment to partner with various infrastructure and developmental opportunities in India, deepening bilateral development partnership in clean energy, urban renewal, and transport and infrastructure. Agenda for the International Solar Alliance, joint development projects in third countries with special focus on Africa. The deliverables are expected to be on skill development, space cooperation, information technology, cyber, etc. After his visit to Paris, Prime Minister will be traveling to the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain between 23rd, 25th August. Prime Minister is expected to arrive in the UAE from Paris on 23rd, and the official engagements is expected to be on 24th August in Abu Dhabi. There will be delegation-level talks with His Highness the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, as well as the presentation of the Order of Zayed, the highest civil decoration of the UAE, on PM, followed by a banquet hosted in honor of Prime Minister. During the visit, Prime Minister Modi would receive the Order of Zayed, the highest civil decoration of the UAE, which was announced earlier during April 2019 in recognition of the distinguished leadership of Prime Minister for giving a big boost to bilateral relations between the two countries. The award, in the name of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the founding father of the UAE, acquires special significance as it was awarded to the Prime Minister in the year of the birth centenary of Sheikh Zayed. Further, commemorative stamp on Mahatma Gandhi will be released on the occasion of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Arrangements for launch of RuPay card in the UAE will also be put in place during this visit. India's bilateral relations with UAE are multifaceted and cover trade and investment, energy security, Indian community, etc. The historic visit of our Prime Minister to the UAE in August 2015, after a gap of 34 years, redefined bilateral ties as the two countries agreed to elevate the relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership through strengthening of cooperation in areas including trade, investments, security, counterterrorism, joint defense production, space cooperation, etc. The visit provided momentum to exchange of visits at the highest level, providing impetus to the multifaceted bilateral cooperation that we have today. The Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi visited India during February 2016 and then again in January 2017 as the chief guest at the Republic Day celebrations. Prime Minister Modi visited the UAE in February 2018, also to be the keynote speaker at the World Government Summit, where India was provided the guest of honor status. We have had frequent exchange of visits at the level of foreign ministers and other ministers. Foreign Minister of the UAE, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, has visited India several times, including recently in July 2019. EM has also visited UAE on several occasions, including for addressing the OIC Foreign Ministers Forum in Abu Dhabi on the 1st of March as guest of honor. The bilateral trade is about US dollars 60 billion, and UAE is our third largest trade partner after the US and China. There are two-way robust investments. UAE has investments in India to the tune of nearly 7 billion. During the visit of our, can you hear me? During the visit of our Prime Minister to UAE in August 2015, can you?
Hello.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Can you hear me now? I think it won't work here. During the, you can hear now? During the visit of our Prime Minister to UAE in August 2015, the two sides agreed that the investment institutions in UAE would be encouraged to raise investments in India to a target of 75 billion. Can you hear? You can hear me now? Yeah. During the visit of our Prime Minister to UAE in August 2015, the two sides agreed that the investment institutions in UAE would be encouraged to raise investments in India to the target of US dollars 75 billion. UAE is the fifth largest source of supplies of crude oil for India. UAE has invested in the ISPRL cavern in Mangaluru, and discussions on the finalization of terms for UAE investment in the Padur cavern are at an advanced stage. The traditional buyer-seller relationship has since been raised to a partnership, with India participating in Lower Zakum and Block 1 offshore oil fields in the UAE. ADNOC of UAE has picked up 50% partnership with Saudi Aramco in its US dollars 44 billion investment in West Coast refinery and petrochemical project. India and UAE are actively engaged in cooperation in the area of defense and security, including holding the first ever joint naval exercises in the year 2018. The UAE hosts a large 3.3 million strong Indian community and looks after their welfare. As you're aware, the UAE government has allocated land for building a place of worship for the Indian community. After his visit to the UAE, Prime Minister would be paying a state visit to Bahrain between 24th-25th August 2019. His visit will be the first ever Indian Prime Minister's visit to the Kingdom of Bahrain. The last high-level bilateral visit between the two countries was the landmark visit to India of the King of Bahrain, His Majesty Sheikh Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, in February 2014. The visit comes at a juncture when the relations between the two countries are excellent, when trade relations are growing at a faster pace, and both countries are looking to expand the ties into new areas. India and Bahrain enjoy excellent bilateral relations characterized by cordial political, economic, and cultural contacts. Our bilateral trade and commercial exchanges go back about 5,000 years, tracing their origins to the period of the Dilmun civilization in Bahrain and the Indus Valley civilization in Delhi, in India. His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa paid his first state visit to India from 18-20th February 2014. The king was accompanied by a 130-member strong business delegation. Besides signing various MOUs, the Joint High Commission was also established between the two countries. The visit set a roadmap for our bilateral relations. Frequent exchanges of visits at the level of foreign ministers, in fact, were instrumental in expanding our ties in various fields and sectors in the last 5 years. The then EAM, Srimati Sushma Swaraj visited Bahrain 3 times in a gap of 4 years. We have a well-functioning bilateral mechanism with Bahrain. As I mentioned, High Joint Commission covers the entire spectrum of our relations. The second meeting of the High Joint Commission was held in Manama in July 2018, which was co-chaired by EAM. We are keen to further trade and investment ties with Bahrain and avail of the strategic location of Bahrain as a gateway to the GCC market. India-Bahrain bilateral trade maintained an upward trajectory for the second consecutive year, with bilateral trade reaching 1.28 billion in the year 2018-19, registering an increase of 20% over the previous year. Indian entrepreneurs and Indian industries are actively investing in the Gulf. I'm happy that Indian investments in Bahrain have been growing at a much faster rate in sectors like financial services, telecommunications, aluminium production, organic chemicals, healthcare, etc. Indian capital investments in Bahrain have crossed US dollars 1.5 billion, with financial services being at the top, followed by real estate and hospitality sector. There are more than 3,000 Indian-owned joint venture companies registered in Bahrain. Bahrain is the leading country in GCC and the Middle East for providing financial services, and it has become a fintech hub. In this area of fintech, MOU was signed in December 2018 between the Economic Development Bank of Bahrain and the state of Maharashtra for cooperation in development of fintech sector by exploring greater synergies between India and Bahrain. Bahrain has conveyed its interest in joining ISA as a member state following the decision to amend the treaty. A statement of intent in this regard is expected to be signed during the visit. Bahrain announced on 1st April the discovery of new tight oil and deep gas reserves in the Khalij al-Bahrain basin located off the west coast of Bahrain. Our oil PSUs are keen to invest in securing a block in Khalij al-Bahrain basin, and in this regard, OVL has also signed an expression of interest last year with BAPCO. Bahrain and India signed an MOU in the area of exploration and peaceful uses of outer space in March 2019. Discussions are ongoing, particularly in the area of construction and launching of CubeSat, establishment of ground station, and providing satellite and ground station data of Bahrain and of capacity building and training as well between the National Space Science Agency of Bahrain and ISRO. In this regard, a statement of intent is expected to be signed during the Prime Minister's visit. Arrangements for launch of RuPay card in Bahrain is also expected to be put in place during this visit. We have strong security cooperation between the two countries, and we have a security dialogue with Bahrain at the level of Deputy NSA. The security dialogue provides an opportunity for enhanced counter-terrorism security cooperation with Bahrain. Bahrain expressed solidarity with India and extended this support to us on all actions taken to confront and eradicate terrorism. Bahrain condemned the Pulwama terrorist attack in 2019. Presence of nearly 350,000 Indian nationals, who comprise about 1/4 of the total population of Bahrain, is an important anchor in our bilateral relations. During the visit, Prime Minister will hold official talks with the Prime Minister of Bahrain, His Royal Highness Sheikh Khalifa. His Majesty the King will be hosting a banquet dinner in honor of the Prime Minister. The Memorandum of Understanding, Statements of Intent, which will be signed, will be in the areas of culture, space, and renewable energy. PM will also visit the Srinathji Temple to launch its renovation. Srinathji Temple was established in the 19th century under the royal patronage. The temple holds the distinction of being the first and the oldest temple in the Gulf region. The renovation of the temple is going to be launched by the Prime Minister in its 200th year during this visit. Prime Minister will be returning to Biarritz, France on the 25th of August to attend the welcome dinner hosted by President Macron for all the G7 and Biarritz partner countries. On 26th of August, Prime Minister will participate in the sessions on climate, biodiversity, oceans, and on digital transformation. The main theme of the French presidency of G7 is combating inequality. France has invited as Biarritz partners Australia, Chile, and South Africa, along with India, and from Africa, Rwanda, Senegal, Burkina Faso, and Egypt have also been invited. Honorable Shri Suresh Prabhu, Sherpa for G7 and G20, will also be present at Biarritz. The session on climate, biodiversity, and oceans would see the leaders exchanging views on addressing these challenges. As you're aware, biodiversity loss, oceans degradation, and climate change are three interconnected key global challenges that threaten development, health, and economic stability, especially in the developing countries. Coming to digital transformation session, Prime Minister would naturally be showcasing India's success in utilizing digital technologies for efficient public delivery through Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile and in bringing in good governance. At the same time, we are seeing increasingly the misuse of the digital platforms to promote terrorism and radicalism. Harmful and violent content is becoming prevalent, which is a threat to democracy as well. These issues would also be discussed in the session on digital transformation. After this summit, no joint communique is expected to be issued. However, the leaders are expected to endorse two documents: Met's Charter on Biodiversity, Biarritz Declaration Strategy for an open, free, and secure digital revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have time for taking few questions. Siddhant and Parikshit.
So just one clarification. India is going to roll out the RuPay card in both the countries, or I couldn't understand necessary arrangements which will be put. So is it a rollout? And secondly, sir, how does India's increased engagement with Muslim countries is helping India when it comes to backing New Delhi at the international forums and of course at the OIC?
Take some more questions.
Sir, in the light of what's been happening in Kashmir and the UNSC meeting, is the Prime Minister expected to brief the leaders of UAE, the French President, also the leaders of Bahrain about India's position and what Pakistan is also trying to do? Also, if we could get some information on the Prime Minister's bilateral meetings on the sidelines of the G7, including if there is a meeting with Donald Trump.
As far as RuPay card is concerned, what we plan to do right now is both in UAE and in Bahrain sign MOUs, because this, as you know, will be signed by the... You can hear me now? Yeah. As far as RuPay card is concerned, we plan to sign MOUs in UAE and in Bahrain. As you know, the institutions which are dealing with RuPay card in these countries, as well as our own organization, they have to enter into an MOU so that these can start being used in these countries. And that is what we expect to do in these two countries. And as far as our engagement with the Arab League and others are concerned, and the OIC, you are of course already aware of the fact that we had a very historic invitation which came for addressing the OIC foreign ministers on the 1st of March earlier this year, and as a guest of honor. And I think our engagement has been extremely robust. Our relations with the Arab countries and many of the other countries are at an all-time high. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Our relations with the Gulf are at an all-time high, and therefore there is absolutely no question of the fact that we enjoy excellent relations with the Islamic world. On the question of whether this issue will be coming up, I'm afraid I'm not going to second guess the Prime Minister, so I'll just leave it at that. And as far as bilateral meetings are concerned, I'm not sure whether these have been firmed up yet. Yes, it has not yet been firmed up.
Thank you. Manish?
Sir, for the G7 summit, what will be India's major priorities in terms of Prime Minister's interventions at one or two sessions? That's number one. Number two, on the French talks with the French Prime Minister, with France, what is it, issues relating to maritime security and specifically collaboration in Indo-Pacific, will that also be on the agenda?
I'll just request Suresh to answer your first part, and Balasubramaniam, if you can answer the other one.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. You see the two sessions. One is focusing on climate change, biodiversity, and as well as the oceans. And the second session is on digital transformation. And in a way, if you look at it, all the four topics relating to the realization of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, number one. And number two, the countries which are most impacted in all the four topics when you look at it is the developing countries. Because it's the developing countries which are most affected by climate change and also the loss of biodiversity and also the degradation of the oceans. So naturally, that would be the focus of our Prime Minister's interventions. He would be focusing on how India has been approaching these issues domestically and what more we can do both domestically and also internationally as in partnership with the G7 countries. And B, in terms of the digital transformation, naturally I think India has been showing the way how we could use digital technology for making it an inclusive process in terms of governance, in terms of providing better governance. As mentioned earlier by Secretary, the JAM, it's a great example of success of how technology is being used to address our own development needs and in meeting the aspirations of the people for better governance and making it an inclusive process. So that would also be showcased in that session. In addition to also discussing about how artificial intelligence is going to be impacting in times to come and how it needs to be more people-oriented and people-centric in terms of its development.
As far as maritime cooperation is concerned, there has been very good cooperation between India and France. I mean, including in the Sagar prospect, which we are having, the security and growth for all in the region. We are having close cooperation. Recently, France also participated in Varuna exercise, the naval exercise over here, and in other areas of in other areas like HADR, protecting biodiversity, capacity building. So these are the areas in which we will have talks in respect of cooperation and strengthening cooperation between the two countries.
Thank you, Balu. Ranjit ji?
My question is on Jaitapur nuclear power plants. What is the status of commercial negotiations? When do you expect it to finalized?
Thank you. I think, Smita, you have? Ji. Udhar.
What is the trade US dollar 11.89? Am I correct?
Between which countries? India and France. Okay.
The 11.89.
We'll clarify that. Thank you. Ji, Venkat ji.
This is about India and the OIC. At one point of time, India, I think, was interested in joining the OIC as a member, but some countries opposed it. considering that there are more Muslims in India than the whole of the Middle East, is there any renewed interest in India wanting to join the OIC, particularly when our foreign minister was invited a few months ago to address the OIC meeting as a special guest? Thanks.
Yeah, Archana,
Yeah, hi.
you have a
Nidhi.
question?
Yeah. I have two questions. You mentioned that Indian companies are keen to invest in Khalij Al Bahrain Basin of Bahrain. So is there a possibility of signing any agreement during the Prime Minister's visit? And the second on the Padur, because the talks have been continuing for last 1 year, but it has not yet culminated into a final agreement. So is there a possibility of that as well to be discussed or taken forward during the meeting?
Coming to your last question first, there is not going to be, I don't think there's going to be any agreement which is going to be signed this time. Because the MOU has already been signed between the Indian parties and the Bahraini side, and therefore they are discussing the whole thing. And as far as Padur is concerned, I think there are certain things from our side also which has to be done, and that's partly the reason why this is probably not signed as yet. But I can assure you there is no dearth of this thing from both sides, commitment from both sides to ensure that it is signed as soon as possible. That is the answer I have. As far as OIC is concerned, that the invitation which they extended to us as a guest of honor was something which, of course, reflected in many ways the high esteem which the Islamic world has for India. And there is no doubt about it. And but however, at this point of time, I don't think there is any thinking to take this any further as of now. And I'll request on this power project, I would like you to.
We are politically committed to finalize the Jaitapur nuclear power project as soon as possible. So we have, in December 2018, we have signed this industrial way forward agreement, and subsequently in March 2018, we have done the implementation part of it, of the industrial way forward. The techno-commercial offer between, which has been submitted, is under active discussion between the technical agencies, NPCIL, DAE, and the EDF of France. So it all depends on the most important aspect. It all depends on the cost effectiveness and other things. So it is being discussed, and we are committed to finalize it as soon as possible.
Thank you. I'll take the last batch of maybe 2 questions. Secretary as AR has to leave. Ji, Udhar.
In Paris, will there be a review of the Rafale deal, the progress, and also the controversies related to the deal, especially the controversies involving people in Paris?
Thank you. The last question, right there.
You were talking about France and India working together in Africa. In which countries and what projects, please, if you could tell us?
Thank you.
Taking the last question first, we are looking at certain sectors. For example, solar pumps, because solar energy is a sector which is of great interest to both of us, and we have having also been the brainchild behind the International Solar Alliance. So we are looking at several countries actually, but in the context of solar pumps. That is one area of interest to us. We're also looking at a couple of countries to collaborate on capacity building, set up vocational training centers. So therefore we are looking actually at several countries, but sectors are, at this point of time, looking at sectors, and we are hoping that we'll get a fix on what we can do together in consultation obviously with these countries, because it always has to be demand driven, and that's what we are looking at. And I'll let Bala answer the last question.
I can only add that defense cooperation is an important part of the discussions between India and France, and I'm sure this would also be discussed. Defense cooperation would be positively discussed.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you, Secretary and other people on the podium, and thank you all for joining.